The police chief laughed when James Brown walked into the Augusta police station and said, "I'll pay bail for all of them." It was April 5th, 1968, the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. Augusta was burning. Over 60 people had been arrested during the riots. Most of them were just black folks who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. "All of them?" the chief repeated, still laughing. "Mr. Brown, that's over $50,000. James looked the chief dead in the eye. "Then I'll bring you $50,000. The chief stopped laughing, because 2 hours later, James Brown walked back in with more cash than that police station had ever seen. April 4th, 1968. D6:01 p.m., Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. The news spread across America like wildfire, and within hours, American cities began to burn. James Brown was in his hotel room in Augusta, Georgia, when he heard the news. He was 34 years old, at the absolute peak of his career. He'd just released "Say It Loud." "I'm black, and I'm proud." He was the voice of Black America, and now that voice was sitting in a hotel room, watching his TV in stunned silence, as Walter Cronkite announced that Dr. King was dead. James had known Dr. King. Not well, but they'd met several times. They'd talked about music, about the movement, about what it meant to be black in America. King had told James once, "Your music moves people, that's power. Use it wisely." Now Dr. King was gone, shot by a white man, dead at 39 years old. James turned off the TV. He couldn't watch anymore. He walked to the window and looked out at Augusta, the city where he'd shined shoes as a barefoot kid, the city where he'd been arrested as a teenager for stealing clothes, the city that had never quite known what to do with James Brown. Within hours, Augusta started burning. Not literally at first, but the rage was there. Black neighborhoods were filling with people, angry, grieving, confused people. The police were everywhere. The National Guard was being called in, and arrests started happening. Lots of arrests. By midnight, on April 4th, the Augusta jail was filling up. By noon on April 5th, over 60 black people were in custody. Some had been throwing rocks, some had been shouting at police, but most had just been outside, walking home, standing on corners, existing while black in Augusta, Georgia, on the night Martin Luther King was murdered. James Brown woke up on April 5th to the sound of sirens. He turned on the TV. The local news showed Augusta police dragging people into vans. The reporter said, "Over 60 arrested in riots following King assassination." James watched footage of his city media's police in riot gear, smoke rising from a few buildings, and black people being loaded into police vehicles. James recognized some of the faces. That was Mrs. Johnson's son. That was the kid who worked at the corner store. That was the old man who used to watch James shine shoes 30 years ago. These weren't rioters. These were his people, his neighbors. James called his manager, Ben Bart. "Ben, how many people they got in jail?" "Over 60. From what I'm hearing, maybe more. They all get bail set." "James, most of these folks can't afford bail. We're talking $500, $1,000 per person. These are working people. They don't have that kind of money." James was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Find out the total. All of them. What's the total bail amount?" "James, what are you thinking? Just find out." Ben called back an hour later. "It's over $50,000. James, that's more money than most people will see in their entire lives." "You can't." "I'm going to the police station," James said. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to get them out." James, you can't bail out 60 people. That's watch me. James Brown got dressed. He put on one of his nice suits. Dark, professional, commanding. He looked at himself in the mirror. The godfather of soul, the hardest working man in show business, the voice of black pride. And today he was going to be something else. Today he was going to be their lawyer, their banker, their savior. He walked into the Augusta police station at 2:30 p.m. The place was chaos, phones ringing, officers yelling, family members crying, trying to find out about their loved ones. James walked straight to the front desk. "I need to speak to Chief Douglas," James said. The desk sergeant looked up. "Mr. Brown, what are you doing here?" "I need to speak to the chief, now." 5 minutes later, James was in Chief Douglas's office. The chief was a white man in his 50s, grey hair, tired eyes. He'd been up all night, dealing with the arrests. He wasn't in the mood for celebrity visitors. "Mr. Brown, I'm very busy. What can I do for you? The people you arrested last night, I want to bail them out." Chief Douglas blinked. "Which one?" "All of them." The chief stared at James for a moment. Then he laughed. Not a mean laugh, but a genuinely amused laugh. "Mr. Brown, I appreciate the gesture, but we're talking about over 60 people here. I know that's over $50,000 in bail. I know you don't have that kind of money." James looked at the chief without blinking. "Yes, I do. Even if you did, you can't just bail out everybody. That's not how this works." "Actually, Chief, that's exactly how it works. Anyone can post bail for anyone. It's called being a surety. I learned that when I was a teenager and got arrested in this very station for stealing a suit. I'm sure you remember that arrest, Chief. It's in your files." The chief's face tightened. He didn't like being lectured by James Brown about the law. "Mr. Brown, these people were arrested for rioting. These people were arrested for being black and angry that someone killed Dr. King. And you know what, Chief? They have every right to be angry. I'm angry. Are you going to arrest me too?" "That's not." "How many of those 60 people actually broke a law? How many threw a rock? How many set a fire? I'm willing to bet most of them were just standing on corners, walking home, being black in Augusta, while the police were looking for someone to arrest." Chief Douglas stood up. "Mr. Brown, I don't have time for this conversation." James stood up too. "Then make it simple. I'll pay the bail. All of it. Right now. You don't have $50,000 cash. Then I'll bring you $50,000 cash." The chief laughed again. "Mr. Brown, even if you could, 2 hours. Give me 2 hours, and I'll be back with the money." James walked out before the chief could respond. Back at his hotel, James made phone calls. He called his accountant. He called his lawyer. He called the bank where he kept his money. In 1968, James Brown was making millions. "Say It Loud, I'm Black, and I'm Proud" was #1. He was touring constantly, selling out everywhere. He had money. More money than a kid from Augusta should have ever had. And today he was going to use it. "Mr. Brown, I can't authorize this," his accountant said. "That's a huge amount of cash. If you wire it, no wire, cash. I want them to see it. I want that police chief to count every single bill. James, get me the money." 2 hours and 15 minutes after walking out of the police station, James Brown walked back in. He was carrying 2 leather briefcases. They were heavy. The desk sergeant's eyes went wide. "I need to see Chief Douglas again," James said calmly. The chief came out of his office looking irritated. "Mr. Brown, I told you." James set both briefcases on the front desk. He opened them. They were filled with cash, stacks and stacks of $100 bills. The entire police station went silent. Officers stopped what they were doing. Family members stopped crying. Everyone stared at the briefcases full of money. "Count it," James said quietly. Chief Douglas's face had gone white. You actually count it, Chief. It's all there. Every dollar of bail for every person you arrested last night." The chief looked at the money, then at James, then back at the money. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack." It took them 45 minutes to count it all. $52,347. More than enough to cover bail for every single person arrested during the riots. Officers kept glancing at James, who stood there the entire time, arms crossed, watching them count. When they finished, Chief Douglas looked at James with something new in his eyes. Not respect exactly, but something close. "Mr. Brown, this is unprecedented." "Good," James said. "Now start releasing them. It's going to take time. We have to process, then start processing." For the next 3 hours, the Augusta police station processed release after release. One by one, the 60-plus people arrested the night before walked out of holding cells. Some cried, some were confused. All of them asked the same question: "Who paid my bail?" And the officers had to say the same thing over and over. "James Brown. James Brown paid your bail." James stood in the lobby the entire time, watching them come out. Some recognized him immediately and tried to thank him. He'd shake their hands, tell them to go home to their families. Some didn't recognize him at first. They were so shocked to be free that they didn't process who was standing there. An elderly woman came out, maybe 70 years old. She'd been arrested for disturbing the peace because she'd been crying on her porch when police drove by. When she saw James, she walked straight to him and hugged him without saying a word. James hugged her back. A young man, maybe 19, came out with tears streaming down his face. "Mr. Brown, I don't have money to pay you back." "I'm not asking you to pay me back," James said, "but that's thousands of dollars. I can't." "Listen to me. Dr. King spent his whole life fighting so black people could be free. I'm not going to let you sit in jail the day after he died because you couldn't afford bail. You understand me?" The young man nodded, unable to speak. By 8 p.m., they were all out. Every single person. 62 people total. $52,347 in bail. All paid by James Brown. When the last person walked out, James picked up his empty briefcases and turned to leave. Chief Douglas called out to him, "Mr. Brown." James stopped. That was a good thing you did." James looked at the chief. "It was the only thing to do, Chief. You should remember that next time you're deciding who to arrest and who to let go home." James walked out of the Augusta police station into the April evening. Word had already spread through the black community about what he'd done. People were lined up outside, family members of the released prisoners, neighbors, friends. When they saw James, they started applauding. Not screaming, not shouting, just clapping. Respectful, grateful applause. James didn't stay to accept their thanks. He got in his car and drove back to his hotel. He was exhausted, emotionally, financially, spiritually exhausted. But he'd done something. On the day after Martin Luther King was killed, on the day when America was burning, and black people were being arrested just for being black, James Brown had used his money for something that mattered. The news spread fast. By the next day, newspapers across the country were reporting the story. James Brown bails out 62 Augusta residents. The black community celebrated it. The white community didn't know what to make of it. And James just kept working. Because that's what he did. He worked. Years later, someone asked James Brown why he did it. Why he spent over $50,000 to bail out people he didn't even know. Because I was one of those people once, James said. When I was a teenager, I got arrested, and I sat in that same jail because I couldn't afford bail. Nobody helped me. I had to figure it out on my own. So when I saw all those people sitting in there for nothing, just for being black and angry that Dr. King was killed, I thought about that teenager who sat in that cell scared and alone, and I decided nobody was going to sit in there if I could help it. Even though you knew most of them couldn't pay you back, I didn't do it for the money. I did it because it was right. Dr. King died fighting for justice. The least I could do was bail out some people who were arrested unjustly. That's not charity. That's justice. The Augusta police station doesn't have a plaque about what happened that day. There's no memorial, but in Augusta's black community, the story is still told. About the day after Martin Luther King died, about the 62 people who were arrested, about the police chief who laughed when James Brown said he'd pay bail for everyone, and about the moment when James Brown walked back in with 2 briefcases full of cash and freed them all. Because that's who James Brown was. Not just a performer, not just an entertainer, but a man who remembered where he came from. A man who remembered sitting in that jail cell as a scared teenager. And a man who made sure that when he had the power to help, he used it. If this story of justice, courage, and using wealth for good moved you, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that having power means nothing if you don't use it to help others. What would you do if you had the power to free 62 people? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the moments when legends became heroes.